there's a lot of things that qualify you for them,
Yes.
or disqualify you for them. Like say we want to be, yeah, that you've been working with Dwayne and I a little bit. If we want to be a woman-owned, you know, I would have to have like 51% of the company, correct?
Correct. Yeah, majority owner.
Right, but when you look into the details of something, it usually says if it's going to be claimed as a woman-owned and they're the majority owner, they have to be the expert in the field. So what is the parameters for when you're required the expert, or when you have enough experience in the field?
Well, you know, that's a very gray area. How are they going to prove that you're not an expert?
Well, if there's like certifications required, so like I'm not a pilot, and we're in the, you know, pilot training industry.
Right.
So I guess kind of like that. If I am not a certified pilot under the FAA, then how could I possibly know what the best pilot training is?
Where did you find that rule at? Because I honestly have never heard of it.
That was something that Dwayne had looked up, that there was like a mechanics, or a husband and wife owned a mechanic shop, and they were trying to be certified, and they did a site visit of their mechanic shop, but she was basically running the books and running everything, but he was the one that was actually the mechanic, so if they couldn't qualify as women-owned. I don't know where he read it, but
yeah,
he's busy right now.
That's a new one on me. If he could find that and send it, that'd be awesome. And I can run it by, you know, our legal team and see what they think about it.
Okay.
But that is a first I've heard.
Okay.
So just goes to show you, when people say I know everything, nope, sure don't. Put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, all right, but that's kind of what we're interested in is, you know, are there parameters to all of these things? Like I know a couple of the attachments you sent in the previous email, where, you know, like what is qualified here and how do you qualify for HubZone and all that stuff. But this one was something else I had heard, you know, if you're going to be the majority owner and all of these things fall under you specifically, like especially like the economically disadvantaged women owned, it has to be particular towards me.
Right.
So I guess I'm just kind of wondering what all those specific requirements are.
Well, the only case that I've ever heard where there's an issue like that is when the woman, the majority owner, is not physically running the business. There was a situation where a guy tried to say his business is woman-owned, but his wife had a day job and was going to school. And she literally didn't, she had no involvement in the business, you know. That is not a gray area. That's pretty much straight up, you're not woman-owned. Okay, you can't just say you are and put a woman in charge. That's the same thing that was happening with vet-biz. There was two problems with vet-biz back in 2012 was the reason why they revamped it. They shut it down, revamped it, and now it's really impossible, not impossible, it's really difficult to register in vet-biz now. Because of that particular scenario, there were veteran-owned businesses that were getting veteran-owned contracts that maybe a husband and wife team, and the wife was a veteran and the husband was actually running the business but claiming to be veteran owned, but she was, you know, working a day job or going to school or maybe slightly involved in the business but not actually running the day-to-day operations. And that's a gray area. Or veterans were winning contracts and they were subbing it out to businesses claiming to be veteran owned that weren't, so therefore the bulk of the money wasn't going to veterans. So that's one of the main reasons they took vet-biz down in 2012 for several months and changed it, modified it, revamped it to make it literally impossible to cheat.
Okay.
Yeah. If he could find that and send it to me, that'd be great, because it's like I said, it's the first I've heard, and I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's specific to like the industry, if the industry requires certifications.
And that maybe could be. Or he might have been reading about state woman-owned certifications, because every state's different. States have a woman-owned cert because a lot of states consider women minorities.
Okay.
They group you in that setting, but the feds don't consider women minorities. The feds have a particular set aside for women and for minorities.
If you get a federal certification, I guess, or classification, does that qualify for the state, or do you have to do both separately?
Well, they're two separate certifications. So your state certification qualifies you as woman-owned in that state, but not in other states, and that doesn't count as a federal certification. Your federal woman-owned certification counts federally, but it's not going to help you on state contracts.
Okay, so it doesn't really help you when you go outside of your state, and the state one only helps you in your own state.
Correct. And, you know, the more set aside you hold, I'll put you this way, the more set aside you hold, the more apt anyone is to hire you, regardless of their set aside requirements, because a lot of states use federal funding. So a lot of states have to hire a certain percentage of federal contractors. And in some cases, you know, rarely are the feds doing state contracts. It doesn't really go, but see, the feds also recognize the DBE. Let me show you an example. All right, the disadvantaged business enterprise, the DBE, the MBE, the WBE, those are all state certifications through the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation is a federal agency, but it's a state certification, and each state is different based on the state's rules and laws. But if you go into, like this, for example, whoops. If you look in FPDS, we're going to look up disadvantage. We're going to go by, actually, I should go by date signed. So this was awarded yesterday. Click the view link. See, the feds recognize the disadvantaged, but there's no set aside for it. There's no requirement for them to hire disadvantaged, but they still recognize it. So, you know, these guys are minority, black, emerging small business, service disabled veteran, 8A, and they're a SDBE. So take their DUNS number, just out of curiosity. It's 1,150 contracts, and this system only tracks 10% of the spending. So they could have as many as 11,000 contracts because they hold all those certifications. It's more beneficial, and if it's a prime award to a subcontractor, then they recognize all the set-asides. Because more than likely, if they're doing federal contracts, they're probably also doing state. So they're having to meet those criteria on both sides of the coin. And if they hire you and you hold both, they can claim it on both sides.
Okay, good. That brings me to another question. As a sub to a prime, if we have certain set-asides and we're going into and bidding on something new with a prime, it's not like after it was awarded to the prime and then they start subbing out. It's during. Does the government recognize the subcontractors set-asides, I guess?
Yes, yes.
Or just the prime?
No, in some cases they do. So in some cases, if the prime is hiring a sub who also holds all those certifications, they can claim that as well.
Okay.
Not in all cases. In some cases, the prime doesn't even have to disclose who the sub is. So if the prime's not disclosing who the sub is, then the purchasing officer or the agency or the government agent is not going to know how much money is going to that sub. But these guys we just looked at, service disabled veteran, minority woman, 8A, SDBE, they've done, I got to put my readers on for this, at $26 million. That's $262 million in federal contracts. You know, so the more set-asides you have, the more advantageous it is for the government or for primes to hire you, period. Makes sense? Did I lose you guys? Hello, check 1, 2, testing. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, John.
Okay, we must have just lost Jessica there for a second. Yeah, she went offline. She'll probably come right back. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question, bid, solicitation, proposal? Anyone?
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
John Stapleton, quick question. I had an intern ask me the other day, are there government categories for, he is legally blind. Now, would that fall under the severely disabled category?
That it wouldn't. The only disability that the federal government recognizes would be a service disability, but there's something called the Industries for the Blind. Industries for the Blind are companies that hire blind people as employees, but that's not going to help you if the seeing impaired, we can say blind, right? That's not a bad word these days. If the blind person is the owner of the company, then the Industries for the Blind isn't going to help them, because Industries for the Blind is for hiring people. But there's also, there's contracts that are supposed to be awarded to blind-owned business owners, but I've never found how it actually works. And honestly, I've never really had someone who was in that position to try and utilize it, to learn, you know, because I'm not blind, so I would never have looked into that unless it was for a client. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that's a great subject that I want to do research on. That's what I'm trying to say. I was dealing with the same thing with Jeremiah comes on here sometimes, and Jeremiah has hearing issues. Therefore, he's got a speech impediment, and there are some contracts that are for people with hearing issues or people that are deaf. And you know, that's a great question, because I know another friend of mine whose husband is 100% blind, and he has problems with the what's it called, 24/7 or 247, something like that, where because they don't see daylight and night, they don't fit into a normal routine like we do, a normal pattern. So they could wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and to them, it could feel like the day. And then during the day, they get tired because it feels like the night, if that makes sense. I don't know a whole lot about it, but that's two areas that I want to do some more research and find out. Great questions, guys.
Cool. John, where does it say, I know a couple days ago you had mentioned that somewhere, if you're a subcontractor, there's something you can send in where they make sure that you're getting paid by your prime?
Excuse me. Every contract's different, so the best case that I can give you advice in that arena would be to tell me what contract it is, what the contract number is, and let's go in and let's look at the fine print and see what it says.
Oh, okay, I'll have to email that to you.
You can also, in some cases, you can go to the G.A.O., the Government Accountability Office, and sometimes they'll help you, but sometimes they say, you know, that's not our problem. So that's another gray area. But yeah, if you can find the SOL number on that particular item, I'll do whatever it takes to help you guys, whether it's winning contracts or getting paid or anything. You know, if it brings money to your pocket or it keeps you from losing money, like teaching you guys how to detect scams and stuff like that, I'm all over it.
All right, great, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question, bid, proposal, solicitation? Rapunzel?
That's all I've got.
Anybody else got anything, something to work on? Question, bid, proposal, solicitation? I got in the training right now, we've got Bethany, Jessica, John, Kelly, and Louie.
John?
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
You know, I've been doing federal contracting for a long time, but I'm trying to branch and, I want to hire some people that don't necessarily have a construction background. And maybe, the government's always buying all kinds of things. I realize it's up to me to find it and things like that. Now, will my cage code affect things like, because we've only done construction, but if we want to find generators or pumps or pipes or whatever to sell to them, is it a derogatory thing if I have the current cage code?
Not in most cases. I mean, if you look at Clay with USA Upsell, for example, he's brokering anything. But I think his primary Naics code is construction.
Yeah.
He sells furniture and somebody I don't talk about anymore because people call him and he gets upset. TV Guy. TV Guy sells more petroleum than he does. I don't even think I've ever seen him do a TV contract. But his company's called TV Guy. And I don't talk about him because people will call him up and ask him for help, and he's not about helping anyone, and he gets mad. Oh well.
I understand. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question? Bid solicitation proposal? Bethany, Jessica, John, Kelly, Lewis. If there's no other questions or anything, I'm going to pause it for a minute and see if a few minutes.
This might be a little off subject, but how about the Tampa Bay Lightning?
How about them? They won, right?
No, yeah, it was a great win, home win. I mean, away win, but pretty good.
I missed the game. I got a son who's 24, and was actually over at his house. We work on cars sometimes, just to hang out with each other and do stuff. And we were working on one of his cars last night, so I missed the game. But Miss Angela is a huge Lightning fan, and she definitely saw it.
Okay.
And we have season tickets to the Lightning games, so on occasion when we go, they kind of rotate through the office who gets to use them, whoever's available, kind of thing.
Nice. Well, great shout out.
Be the Thunder. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question? Bid solicitation proposal?
Yeah, John, one more question here.
Yes.
Is it possible for something to have already been bid on, and then a new solicitation comes out where they can separate out a couple of items from that new solicitation and put it on an old one? Would they retract the one that's already been put out for bid and start over? Is that a possibility?
I've honestly seen everything under the sun happen when it comes to the federal government. I've seen things like that, and I've seen even stranger things. For example, the one that Clay was talking about a couple of months ago that was awarded last year, and he called me up upset. There's no way this supplier can do this for this price. There's no way. So something's fishy. It's an inside job. He's really upset about it because it was a big contract. But that's the same contract that last month he called up and said, hey, they redacted that contract and they gave it to me because I was the next guy, the next best price. And I won it anyway. It's because in that case, the buyer didn't understand the purchase. That's why their price was too low. So they wound up redacting it and giving it to the second bidder. Now, I can tell you another weird one. This is Eric with Kingdom Limo. He had bid on one, and the subcontractor, the sub that he was going to have do it, they went around behind his back and bid on it directly. Well, of course, they won it because they had a better price. He was not happy about that. But then come to find out, a week later, for whatever reason, the government redacted that contract. I don't know if the vendor did something wrong and accept the government, but they redacted it, and then they went to Eric and they said, hey, we took this contract back from that company. You were the next best price. We're going to award it to you now. They turned around and subbed it right back out to the same guys they took it from. And that's a 5-year contract. He's on year 4 on that one. So yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of strange things. I have seen situations where they'll award a contract for multiple products or multiple services and then come back later and change it or add more services or take services away. There was one example, and I just forgot it. Oh, where they put multiple products out, and then they came back and wound up awarding single contracts to individuals for each of the products instead of giving them all to one. You know, so all that stuff's possible. It happens all the time because you know, look at it this way: the federal government's the largest spender on the planet. So when you spend that kind of money, things are going to happen. It's like Tesla's driverless cars. They guaranteed that, you know, accidents are going to happen, but they've tried to say that, you know, no one's ever going to die in a driverless car. What's already happened? Statistics. That's just like when people say, I want to make all my clients happy. You will never make all your clients happy. You can make some of the people happy all the time, all the people happy some of the time, but you'll never make all the people happy all the time. Stuff's just going to happen. You know, it's statistics. All I can say when it does happen is just shake it off and keep going. Roll with it. Does that make sense? Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Good question. Great questions today. Any more?
Okay, John, I have another one.
Yes.
If something's already been out for sources sought and they've already asked for like people's interest, but then they have like a draft RFP or maybe they're putting a, you know, a PWS out for bid, it's never too late to show interest, correct?
I'd say no. I mean, I get some people that say, well, you know, if I miss the pre-site visit, which rarely are mandatory, or it was done as a sources sought or an RFI and we didn't respond and now it's out for bid, should we bother? Yeah. I mean, if it's something you can do, and especially if it's something you specialize in, and it's not that complicated of a bid to submit, you know, worst case scenario, you can email them and just ask them, is it too late? Can I still bid on this? And a lot of times they'll say, yeah. I've even seen people miss the deadline. And the purchasing agent, you know, asks them, can I still submit the bid? And the purchasing agent's like, sure, yeah, no problem. You're going to find purchasing agents it's the 50-50 rule. You know, like I say, people are either lazy or they're driven. Purchasing agents are either really nice and they communicate real well and they're nice people, or they're totally the opposite. They don't communicate at all, and they're, you know, rude and obnoxious. And it doesn't hurt to ask, you know, or if it's not a very complicated bid, it's not going to take long to submit it, go ahead and submit it, especially if you already did it. I see situations where people do it and then they missed the due date, or they didn't understand the actual due date, or they emailed it and the purchasing agent never got it. There was one a couple of months ago, someone FedExed it. They FedExed it overnight, and FedEx goofed and did it second day. You know, but the purchasing agent still accepted it. And I've seen ones where same scenario, and the purchasing agent didn't accept it. Any other questions? No? All right, it's a little after, it's 4:25, so I'll give it a couple of minutes, see if anybody else joins, and if not, I'll shut it down for the day.
You know, reaction to these other things, construction. I mean, there's, you know, sometimes it's seasonal in Indiana. Johnny's down in Dallas, so that's pretty much going all the time. But is there a way to search and find out like what types of things I should be trying to sell the government? Is that something on APP, or is there somewhere else I can look for some item or some service that is, let's say, underutilized for a better lack of a better term?
I get that question a lot, and it's one of those catch-22s that the government doesn't have a report and say, we buy the most of this and the least amount of that. But and there's ways to search that. You can search that in APP, search, your state, and then go by action obligation and see the largest contracts. But that doesn't necessarily mean they buy the most of it. That's just maybe it's a more expensive item. I look at it this way: the more the government buys, the more people are competing to get it. The less the government buys, the less people are competing. So it pretty much works itself out in the grand scheme of things. People who sell, popcorn to the government. There's not a lot of people selling popcorn, but the government doesn't buy a whole lot of popcorn. So it works out. Versus construction, everybody and their mother is selling construction to the government, but the government is one of the largest areas of spending. So it kind of works itself out either way. If you're looking on a local basis, search your state and just go by action obligation. See which contracts are the largest. And then take into consideration if it's a service, construction of a nuclear power plant versus buying widgets.
Yeah. And I over the last 17 years, I've had very little success as a subcontractor. The one time I did, the prime went bankrupt.
Jeez.
But, a lot of people contact me because I am a service disabled veteran. But I need to figure out a way to, to get, to help some of them, because I'd like to think this, if you create a relationship, it's reciprocal.
Exactly. Yeah. When you really want to help yourself, help others. It'll come back tenfold. Now, I can understand where you're coming from, because I have, especially with state and local or non-government, I've heard so many horror stories about people being burned by primes and never getting paid. We paid for materials, we paid for labor, we did this, we did that, and then the prime just didn't pay us, and we had to sue them. And but I've also heard just as many stories, if not more stories, about successful subcontractors that's all they did their whole life was sub, and did very well at it, and always got paid and never hardly ever had an issue. And I look at it this way: it really, in life, in the grand scheme of things, it only takes one opportunity that can change your life. And it goes the same way. It could take one failure that could change your life. But when I talk to really successful people, it pretty much boils down to they got their one big break and they ran with it and never looked back. And then they used that as a foundation to do better. When I was recently at the Southeast Black Chamber of Commerce convention in Tampa, and I was on their board of experts for the discussion about veterans and service disabled veterans. And when I said that to everybody in the room, that, and I said, most of you already know this. Most of you that are really successful, you already know this. It only takes one opportunity to change your life. And people in the room, yep, we finally got our big break and we ran with it, and we've never looked back, and we've been successful ever since. So it's just a matter of not giving up. Keep trying. I've been close several times in life to making it big, if you will, and stuff out of my control. If we don't have any other questions or anything to work on, I'll tell you a quick story. Some of you guys probably remember when FedEx went on strike for like 10 days. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. FedEx said all the employees went on strike. The union went on strike. Packages just stopped. Nothing moved for a whole week. Well, it was bad timing on our behalf that it just so happened that week. But my buddy and I were making fresh fish food, and we were selling it to pet stores. And it was the best fish food ever, because I went to college for marine biology, and we had reef tanks and fancy, expensive fish, and we wanted them to eat good stuff, not the flake that you buy at the store, but we took fresh krill and perch and shrimp and cauliflower and for our vegetable eaters. We flash froze it in reverse osmosis water with all the molybdenum and calcium and all the elements that the fish need to be happy and healthy. And it was the best fish food ever. And we had people begging us to make it. It was just, they loved it. And the pet stores were buying it up. So we decided we're either going to go one route or the other. We were either going to sell to all the pet stores in the country and go that route, or we were going to run ads in magazines and sell it directly to the consumer. I opted to sell to the pet stores. He opted to sell to the consumer. We flipped a coin. He won. So we went the consumer route. We ran an ad in all these fish magazines and aquarium and pet magazines, and we got thousands of orders. We had to hire people to fulfill all the orders, and then we had to pay for all this stuff and get it boxed and all the freight and packaging, and I mean just all the money we invested that week in shipping. And man, we were on it. We made the second mistake was I wanted people to prepay. He wanted to do it COD. For COD, we got more orders. Prepaying, we were getting less orders. So we flipped the coin. COD it was. Then we made our third mistake. We were putting dry ice in the packages because you have to keep it frozen. It's flash frozen. It's fresh fish and shrimp. You can't let that stuff thaw out. We were shipping this stuff overnight, some of it second day, depending on how far across the country it was or how big the package was, how big the order was. And we started with 4 days worth of dry ice. And I convinced him we needed to do 5, even though he didn't want to do 4. I wanted to do 7. We flipped the coin. I lost again. So we only did 4 days worth of dry ice, which was double the delivery time on most cases. All those packages went out that day and the day before that. And the next day, the FedEx employees went on strike and all of our packages sat for a week and rotted and no one paid for them. But that's risk. That's you do these things to be successful. You don't just sit in a chair and wait for success to fall in your lap. You go after it and you fight for it and you bleed and you sweat and you cry, but you get back up and you do it again, you know? And that's not the first time that's happened to me in life, but hey, it is what it is. Just keep going. The only thing that separates us from people that are extremely successful, and more than in most cases, they got their big break and they ran with it. Make sense?
Makes sense, John. Great analogy.
Thank you.
John?
Yes, sir.
I know I'll go get on with your day, but should I be talking to Bobby about, natural collaborations, other people? I mean, I'm a service disabled vet, but I'm in Indiana. Are there other people that are clients of you all's that would be a natural partnership for me, or is that something you guys steer clear of?
We've talked about it, and you can network through APP because you can search in APP and get a database of our clients that are registered. So that's something you could do on your own. For us to pull up a database of our clients and just send it to other clients, there's some risk factors involved because it's sharing data, but you can go in and search it yourself. I've even talked about, and I brought it up in one of the trainings a couple of weeks ago, and it sounded like a good idea. Maybe one day a week, we just do a networking training where it's nothing but I get as many people on the training as possible, and you guys all introduce yourselves and say, this is what I do. Take a minute, tell them what you do, and see if there's any way to network with other clients that I have. I mean, I'm all for it, and I think it's a great idea. These networking events where you can go out and meet other business owners, as long as it's not expensive and you don't have to get a hotel and travel, and it's, situations like that, I would say send me the information about the networking event. Let me check it out first and show you what I look for to make sure it's going to be beneficial. But yeah, all that stuff, it only takes one opportunity, People do these small business meetings where they meet every Saturday at 1 o'clock and have lunch, or they meet one evening a week at 6 o'clock and talk about problems and share things and network. And, every little thing you do is another step towards getting that one break. So I'm all for it.
Hey, John, it's Bethany. I just have a quick question.
Sure.
It was something I was thinking. I'm with Tyron, and we were looking through some stuff the other day, and I found a few sites that you have to be a vendor or a dealer or something.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good idea to register with those, and can we do that as a vendor or a dealer, even though like there's not an actual shop or store?
I would. When I owned my event company, I put us everywhere. I found every website that had anything to do with weddings or parties or bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras. There was a company that specialized in divorces. And I was like, hey, if you want to hire a DJ or a caterer and throw a party for your divorce, you know, and we would do one a month, you know, and sometimes they paid better than the other events, you know. So yeah, I'd say network until you know, as a business owner, you're going to work 12, 14-hour days, and you're going to continue to hustle. You never give up, you know.
Right.
The more you network, the more you get your name out there, the more chances you have of landing that one opportunity that's going to change your life. And up until then, never give up. I'll never forget this picture. I saw it when I was a kid of the frog in the bird's mouth. But he's not going to let that bird swallow him, you know.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Speaking of expanding like that, John, about Naics codes, you know, we're competing against a lot of companies that list tons and tons of Naics codes. Is it more beneficial to have more or to be more specialized and having just like...
That's another catch-22, because some purchasing agents, when they see 50 or 100 Naics codes, they think you're a broker or you're a jack of all trades, so you're not a specialist, and they're not going to hire you because you have too many Naics codes. You're also going to see sometimes a purchasing agent will tell you that you have to have a Naics code listed in SAM and FBO and on your documentation in order for them to hire you, and that's a wives' tale. That is absolutely not true, and I have physical evidence to prove that, because one of my clients won a contract, and one of his competitors tried to do a bid protest and say that he shouldn't have won the contract because he didn't have the Naics code listed. And right here is the document. There we go. So this is a LinkedIn article that I wrote regarding this. And right here in the document is the actual attachment. From the Government Accountability Office, as soon as it opens. So, and here's the decision. Denied. Because his competitor tried to say that he shouldn't have won it because he didn't have the Naics code listed in his FBO or his SAM. And that's not the case. They don't have to. So you don't have to have 50,000 Naics codes to sell multiple items or services. And if you ever have a purchasing agent that tells you differently, don't argue with them. Agree. Tell them you'll fix it or whatever. You can always, if it's something that they want to award you, let's just add it and win it. Let's not fight with them over it. If they don't, and they say they awarded it to someone else because you didn't have the right Naics code, then we do a bid protest showing that you don't have to have the right Naics code listed. Or if it's in the pre-process, the pre-award process, then I will contact the purchasing agent. You know, they don't know that you and I are associated. So I can call the purchasing agent and tell them they're wrong and send them this information and prove to them that they're wrong when that's the case. And that way you don't
If
have to have
someone,
300 Naics codes listed.
hey, John, if someone does put a protest, let's say it's against our company, for instance, do you need to have like some sort of rebuttal ready? Do you even know that they're protesting here, or how does that work?
When there's a protest, two things are going to happen. Usually the contract's redacted, number one. So if you win a contract and it's protested, you're going to lose the contract temporarily. That's usually the first step, is they redact it. Second step is they have to notify all parties involved. So they have to notify you as the awardee. They have to notify all the other bidders. And then they do their investigation, and then they come up with a decision, and then they'll submit a letter like this, which is the decision letter, stating whether or not they agree or disagree or allow or deny the protest. And then if the protest is denied, they'll re-award it to you. Now, I've also seen situations where someone thought, something's fishy here. Something's not right here. And they would submit a bid protest, and the contract was redacted and put back out for bid immediately. So something was fishy. I've seen situations where someone protested it, and the government awarded it to them because maybe something was fishy. Like I've seen all kinds of stuff when it comes to government contracting. It's crazy stories. But I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight in it. The main thing is this: submit as many bids as possible. Reach out to as many vendors as possible to let them know that you can do what they need. You can be a subcontractor, and just throw as much at the wall as possible. The more you throw at the wall, the more it's going to stick. And you only need one to get the past performance to snowball. Any other questions?
So John, when you list your past performance and you were a sub, do you always have to put like who the prime was, or can you just list your projects out?
If you're just randomly sending out your gap statement to people as a marketing marketing avenue, I would just say past performance available upon request, so you're not sharing that data with everybody. If you're responding to a particular solicitation or proposal or bid, you would want to use past performance that's as similar to the project as possible. And I would in that case, because it's a federal purchasing agent, I would list the company that you worked for, but you don't have to give them a name or a phone number or anything like that unless they ask. Now, you're going to get situations where they're going to ask for past performance information, and they're going to be very specific about that past performance. They want it within the last 3 to 5 years. They want it within the size range and same fashion as the contract, and they want to know what company, when's the start date, when's the stop date, how much you were paid, point of contact, phone number, email. They're going to want to know all that. And then in some cases, they'll do what's called a past performance questionnaire, where they'll send out a particular document that they want you to send to your clients, and have your clients fill out this document that also has questions, and they get to rate you on many levels. And then in some cases, they'll do blind past performance questionnaires that they will have you send out directly to your client, to your past performance, your clients, your references. But those people have to send it directly back to the government, not to you. They have to send it directly back to the purchasing agent, so you don't get to see what they put and what they commented and what they said. And in any one of those scenarios, just follow the instructions. Instructions to offer is really the most important factor in winning or losing a contract, is following the instructions. I talk to proposal writers all the time. We got one guy that's working with us that used to be a federal purchasing agent. And he said, yeah, just following the instructions is the first thing I look for. If they don't follow the instructions, we have a reason to throw it out. And we want to throw stuff out. We don't want to do more work than we have to, especially if we have multiple offers and we only need 3 or 5 and we get 7 or 10. We're looking for reasons to throw them out. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Not a problem. Any other questions? Anybody else got a question? Bid solicitation proposal? Well, guys, I think I'm going to upload this one. I think this was a great call today. Some great questions, great information, great motivation. Yeah, I'm going to upload this one probably tomorrow. So anybody who missed it, or if you want to re-listen to it again, this was a good one. Thanks, guys. Great questions. Nothing else? I don't see anything else in the chat. I don't have any emails with any questions.
Thank you so much, John. We appreciate it.
Not a problem. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel, 1 and 4. Tomorrow, I'm sorry. Fridays we're doing, for anyone who's new, I would definitely join our 2 o'clock training on Fridays if you're new. It's a pre-recorded training, but it's primarily for new people, like a welcome training. And if you guys haven't seen it, let us know, and we'll invite you to get on at 2 o'clock tomorrow. It's through YouTube Live. And a lot of it's pre-recorded, but then I'm there to answer questions and welcome you guys aboard and get her done. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, John. Thanks.
No problem.